First Contact's Folly. Captain Isabella Martinez stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her dress uniform pristine but her expression grim. The holographic display behind her showed the devastating losses from humanity's latest encounter with the Void Collective: 17 capital ships destroyed, 32,000 lives lost, and another colony world fallen to the seemingly unstoppable alien force. "With all due respect, counselors," she said, her Texas drawl cutting through the murmurs of the assembled brass, "we're fighting this war like we're still dealing with 20th-century physics. The Void Collective doesn't play by our rules, so why should we play by theirs?" Admiral Tanaka leaned forward, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on Martinez. "You have an alternative suggestion, Captain?" Martinez tapped her datapad, and the display shifted to show a new weapon design. "We've been trying to outgun them, outmaneuver them, outthink them. But their phase shift technology makes conventional weapons almost useless. We need to get personal." The weapon schematic rotated slowly, a 1.5 meter length of advanced composites and energy containment fields, shaped like an ancient sword but humming with plasma field technology. Alongside it, a suit of powered armor decorated with distinctly non-regulation embellishments. "You want to give our soldiers swords?" General Wong's voice dripped with skepticism. "Have you lost your mind, Captain? Not soldiers, General. Knights." Martinez's voice carried the weight of conviction. The Void Collective's shield technology works by predicting conventional weapon trajectories and creating phase-shifted barriers. But their predictive algorithms can't handle close-quarter combat patterns based on human martial arts and classical swordplay. She gestured to another display showing combat footage. "Their ships, their troops, they all fight like machines. Perfect geometry, perfect timing. But that's their weakness. They can't handle chaos, improvisation, the human element. And nobody does chaos and improvisation better than Texans." Lieutenant Commander Rashid, head of R&D, studied the specifications with growing interest. "These energy blade designs, they're not just weapons, are they?" Martinez allowed herself a slight smile. "No, sir. When properly synchronized, multiple blades create interference patterns in the Void Collective's phase fields. We've found a way to turn their greatest defensive advantage into a vulnerability. But it requires getting close, real close. And it requires fighters who aren't afraid to look death in the eye and grin." "And you think Texans are the answer?" Admiral Tanaka's tone was neutral, but his human eye showed a glimmer of interest. "I think we need warriors who can combine the discipline of knights with the audacity of cowboys. People who understand that sometimes the craziest plan is the only one that works." Martinez brought up another display, this one showing training simulations. "We've been running secret trials for 3 months. The results speak for themselves." The footage showed powered armored figures moving in ways that seemed to defy physics, their energy blades creating complex patterns that disrupted Void Collective shield harmonics. It wasn't just combat, it was a deadly dance, unpredictable yet precisely coordinated. "The Lone Star Initiative," Martinez continued. "A specialized unit combining advanced technology with traditional Texas combat philosophy. We're not just fighting the Void Collective, we're confusing the hell out of them." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. It was Commander Rashid who finally spoke. "The energy requirements for these weapons are being handled by what our engineers call the Remember the Alamo power cells." Martinez couldn't quite suppress her grin. "Turns out righteous determination is a renewable resource." Admiral Tanaka rose from his seat, his cybernetic eye scanning the data one final time. "Captain Martinez, this is either the most brilliant innovation in modern military history, or the most elaborate way to get our people killed I've ever seen." "That's the beauty of it, sir," Martinez replied. "The Void Collective won't know which until it's too late. And neither will we. Sometimes you have to roll the hard 6 and trust in human ingenuity." The admiral was quiet for a long moment. "You have 3 months to prove this concept, Captain. Assemble your team, train them, and show us results. If this works." He left the sentence hanging. "When this works, sir," Martinez corrected gently, "we're going to teach the Void Collective why you don't mess with Texas. Or Earth, for that matter." As she left the council chamber, Martinez's datapad chimed with immediate authorization codes and resource allocations. The Lone Star Initiative was officially a go. Now she just had to turn a bunch of starfaring Texans into space knights before the Void Collective reduced humanity to cosmic dust. She touched the antique sheriff's badge pinned to her uniform, a family heirloom from the old days of Texas Rangers. "Time to saddle up," she murmured. The final frontier just got a lot more interesting. Steel and starlight. The training facility on Luna Base Epsilon hummed with activity as Commander Ramirez watched the latest batch of recruits struggle with their energy blades. The massive underground chamber, originally designed for zero-gravity combat training, now hosted what looked like a bizarre fusion of medieval tournament and space-age warfare. "You're thinking too much, Jackson," Ramirez called out to a towering recruit whose blade movements were rigid and mechanical. "The sword isn't a weapon, it's an extension of your spirit. Move like your great-granddaddy at a barn dance." Sergeant Major Wei Li, the facility's chief combat instructor, appeared at Ramirez's side. "They're improving," she noted, her trained eye catching subtle refinements in the recruits' movements. "But we're still losing too many in the simulations." The holographic readouts showed a 62% casualty rate in their latest engagement scenario. Better than last week's 75%, but still far from acceptable. Captain Martinez would be arriving in 2 days for their first formal evaluation, and they needed better numbers. "Show me what you've got." Ramirez stepped onto the training floor, drawing her own energy blade. The familiar hum of the plasma field filled the air as she activated it, the blue-white energy forming the distinctive shape of a cavalry saber. "Who's feeling lucky?" Jackson stepped forward, his massive frame encased in the latest iteration of their specialized armor. The neural interface systems allowed for unprecedented control and sensitivity, but learning to trust the technology was proving to be half the battle. "Remember," Ramirez called out as they circled each other, "the Void Collective expects logic. Patterns. Give them the unexpected." She launched into an attack that seemed to defy both physics and common sense, her blade weaving complex patterns that left phantom trails in the air. Jackson, to his credit, managed to parry the first few strikes before Ramirez's blade slipped past his guard, stopping a hair's breadth from his helmet. "Better," she acknowledged. "But you're still fighting like a soldier. Fight like a Texan." The next hour transformed into an intensive masterclass as Ramirez demonstrated the principles that made their unconventional strategy work. The energy blades weren't just weapons, they were tools for creating quantum-level disruptions in the Void Collective's defensive systems. Each movement had to be both precise and unpredictable, following patterns that looked like chaos to machines but made perfect sense to the human mind. "The problem with the Void Collective," Whaley explained to the assembled recruits, "is that they've perfected warfare as a science. But humans?" She gestured to Ramirez, who was now demonstrating a particularly complex maneuver that somehow incorporated elements of square dancing. "We turn it into an art." The afternoon brought a surprise visitor. Dr. James Henderson, lead scientist of the initiative's R&D division, arrived with the latest prototype modifications. "We've managed to increase the blade's disruption field by 23%, he announced, his excitement barely contained. "And the power consumption is actually lower." Ramirez examined the new designs with appreciation. "How'd you manage that? Would you believe it was inspired by old recordings of Texas fiddle music?" Henderson grinned. "The harmonic resonance patterns, well, let's just say the physics department is still arguing about whether it should be possible." As the day's training wound down, Ramirez gathered her team for a final briefing. The holoprojector displayed their latest intelligence on Void Collective movements. "They're adapting to our conventional forces faster than ever," she noted grimly. 3 more colonies lost in the past month. If this initiative fails... She let the implication hang in the air. Jackson, still nursing bruises from the day's training, spoke up. "Ma'am, permission to speak freely?" Ramirez nodded. "My great-grandfather used to tell stories about the Texas Revolution. About how it wasn't superior numbers or technology that won the day. It was believing in something bigger than yourself, and being crazy enough to fight for it even when the odds said you couldn't win." A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled warriors. Ramirez smiled, recognizing the shift in their collective energy. They were no longer just soldiers learning a new combat style, they were becoming something else entirely. "We deploy for our first real combat operation in 3 weeks, she announced. "Between now and then, we're going to perfect every movement, every technique." The Void Collective thinks they've got humanity figured out? They're about to learn that some things in this universe just can't be calculated. As the recruits filed out, Whaley approached Ramirez with a data tablet. "Latest simulation results," she reported. "Would you like the good news or the better news?" Ramirez raised an eyebrow. "Hit me." "The good news is we've reduced the projected casualty rate to 45%. The better news?" Whaley's usually stoic expression broke into a rare smile. "The Void Collective's combat prediction algorithms show a 98% chance that our tactics will fail completely." "Perfect," Ramirez laughed. "After all, if your enemy is absolutely certain you can't win, they won't see it coming when you do," Whaley finished. Above them, through the reinforced ceiling of the training facility, Earth hung like a blue jewel in the black velvet of space. Somewhere out there, the Void Collective was advancing, certain of their inevitable victory. They had no way of knowing that humanity's newest defenders were about to introduce them to a combat style that would make their quantum computers short-circuit trying to understand it. "Get some rest," Ramirez told her team. "Tomorrow, we dance with destiny." The Dance of Blades. Commander Ramirez gazed through the bridge viewport as the fleet dropped out of hyperspace. The swirling purple nebula of the Orion sector provided a dramatic backdrop for what was about to become either humanity's most innovative military victory or its most spectacular failure. "Void Collective signatures detected," Lieutenant Park announced from the sensor station. 3 capital ships, 12 cruisers, and they're launching fighter squadrons. The alien vessels emerged from the nebula's gases like dark predators, their obsidian hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Their infamous phase shields shimmered with a faint green glow, the technology that had made them nearly invincible against conventional weapons. "Launch the Knights," Ramirez ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "Execute Operation Wildflower." Throughout the fleet, launch bays opened to release squadrons of specialized fighters. Each craft was smaller than standard military vessels, designed for maneuverability rather than firepower. Their hulls bore distinctive markings, stylized versions of ancient Texas cavalry insignias. "All Knights, sound off," Ramirez commanded through the tactical network. "Red Squad, ready to dance," Jackson's voice came through first, followed by the other squadron leaders. Their new confidence was evident in their voices. 3 weeks of intensive training had transformed them from skeptical recruits into true believers. "Remember your training," Ramirez broadcast to all units. "They expect logic, give them legend. Initiate primary attack pattern." What followed would later be described by observers as ballet with battleships. The night squadrons moved in formations that seemed random at first glance but followed complex patterns based on old folk dances. Their energy blades extended from their ships' hulls, creating webs of disrupting energy that made the Void Collective's predictive targeting systems malfunction. "They're confused," Park reported with barely contained excitement. "Their targeting solutions keep failing, they can't get a lock." The Void Collective responded with their standard tactics, geometric patterns of fire designed to maximize coverage and minimize escape routes. But the Knights flowed through the gaps like water, their movements guided by human intuition rather than computer logic. "Red Squad, execute Cotton Eye Joe maneuver," Jackson called out. His squadron spun into a spiral formation that somehow defied both physics and common sense, their energy blades creating a vortex of disruption that tore through a Void Collective cruiser's shields like they weren't even there. "Blue Squad, time for the two-step," another squadron leader announced. Their ships paired off, moving in coordinated patterns that turned their energy blade emissions into a cascading wave of shield-disrupting force. On the bridge of the command ship, Ramirez watched as her crazy plan unfolded. The Void Collective ships were starting to show signs of confusion, their normally perfect formations becoming erratic as they tried to adapt to an attack pattern their computers couldn't predict. "Ma'am," Park called out, "they're attempting to regroup. Energy readings suggest they're charging their main weapons." "Perfect," Ramirez smiled. "All Knights, prepare for the finale. Execute Operation Last Dance." The Knight squadrons suddenly broke from their individual patterns and began moving in perfect synchronization. Their ships traced complex patterns through space while their energy blades created an interwoven field of disruption that expanded outward like a blooming flower. The Void Collective ships fired their main weapons, and missed completely. Their targeting systems, designed to predict logical combat maneuvers, simply couldn't handle the organic, flowing movements of the Knights. "Now!" Ramirez ordered. "All units, close range and engage." The Knights swooped in, their energy blades cutting through the now-disrupted shields of the alien vessels. It wasn't just combat, it was art, a deadly dance choreographed to the rhythm of battle. Jackson's voice crackled through the comm, "Like my great-granddaddy always said, ain't no party like a Texas party." Within minutes, the battle was over. The Void Collective fleet, for the first time in recorded history, had been completely defeated. Their remaining ships retreated in disarray, their perfect formations shattered by an attack pattern that would give their tactical computers the equivalent of a migraine. As the Knights regrouped around the command ship, Ramirez opened a channel to all units. "Well done, everyone. We just taught the Void Collective that some things in this universe can't be calculated. Welcome to the new age of space warfare." The cheers that echoed through the comm system were punctuated by impromptu victory whoops that would have made their ancestors proud. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the Void Collective was about to report something their hive mind had never encountered before: the unpredictable, indomitable spirit of Texas ingenuity combined with advanced technology. "Send word to command," Ramirez ordered. "The Knights program is a success. And tell them to prepare for expansion. Something tells me we're going to need a lot more energy blades." Echoes of victory. The halls of the Lunar Command Center buzzed with unprecedented energy as Admiral Tanaka reviewed the battle footage for the 20th time. The Void Collective's devastating defeat had sent shockwaves through both human and alien space, transforming the Knights from an experimental program into humanity's new hope. "For months since the Orion engagement," he mused, addressing the assembled military leadership. "The Void Collective has lost 37 ships, and we've reclaimed 2 colony systems. All without losing a single Knight squadron." Commander Ramirez stood at attention, though her posture couldn't quite hide her pride. "The enemy is adapting, sir. Their latest formations show attempts to mimic our movement patterns." "Let them try," Jackson added from his position near the tactical display. Now promoted to wing commander, he'd earned the right to speak in these high-level briefings. "They're trying to calculate randomness. Like trying to write down the exact steps of a wedding dance." The holographic display showed the latest encounters. The Void Collective ships now moved in more erratic patterns, attempting to counter the Knights' unpredictable maneuvers. But their movements remained fundamentally mechanical, a computer's interpretation of chaos. Dr. Henderson stepped forward, his research team's findings displayed behind him. The most fascinating aspect is how they're responding to failure. Their entire tactical doctrine was based on predictability. Now they're being forced to evolve. Which makes them vulnerable, Ramirez concluded. Every time they try to adapt, they move further from their strengths and closer to ours. The display shifted to show the latest night squadrons in training. The program had expanded rapidly, with training facilities established in every major colony. The original Texas-based doctrine had evolved, incorporating cultural elements from other Earth regions and colonies. The New Madrid squadron has integrated flamenco patterns into their attack formations, Henderson noted. The Mars Colonial Group is using ancient Aboriginal Dreamtime movements. Each adds another layer of unpredictability. Admiral Tanaka nodded thoughtfully. And the Void Collective's response? Frustration, if machines can feel such a thing, Ramirez smiled. Their latest transmissions show signs of degrading logical coherence. They're encountering something their hive mind can't process, human creativity. The tactical display updated with fresh intelligence. A massive Void Collective fleet was gathering at the edge of known space. Larger than anything they'd encountered before, it represented either desperation or determination. They're preparing something big, Jackson observed. Our long-range scouts report they're bringing in their Supreme Command node, the closest thing they have to a leader. Ramirez studied the data with intense focus. They're not just trying to win anymore. They're trying to understand. And that's exactly what we wanted. Explain, Tanaka prompted. The Void Collective's greatest strength was their unity of purpose, their perfect coordination. By forcing them to adapt to our methods, we're making them question their fundamental nature. Each new attempt to counter us takes them further from their comfort zone. Dr. Henderson pulled up his latest analysis. Their ship designs are changing too. Moving away from geometric perfection toward more organic forms. They're trying to replicate our success by mimicking our nature. Can they succeed? Tanaka asked the question everyone was thinking. No, Ramirez said with quiet confidence. Because they're still approaching it like a mathematical problem. They can copy our movements, but they can't copy our spirit. The meeting concluded with the authorization of Operation Stardance, a bold plan to take the fight directly to the Void Collective's gathering fleet. As the others filed out, Admiral Tanaka held Ramirez back. You've started something remarkable, Commander, he said quietly. Not just a new way of fighting, but a new way of thinking about warfare. The Void Collective wanted to prove the superiority of logic over emotion, of calculation over intuition. And instead, we're teaching them to dance, Ramirez finished. Though I don't think they'll ever truly appreciate the music. As she left the command center, Ramirez passed the training grounds where new night recruits were practicing their formations. Their movements had evolved beyond the original Texas-inspired patterns into something uniquely human, a combination of countless cultural traditions unified by the indomitable human spirit. The next battle would be decisive, she knew. The Void Collective was bringing their full might to bear, desperate to solve the puzzle of human unpredictability. They didn't understand that some things couldn't be solved, they could only be felt, experienced, lived. Time to show them our grand finale, she murmured, watching her knights dance among the stars. The stars at dawn. The massive Void Collective fleet hung against the backdrop of the Carina Nebula like a dark cloud threatening a storm. 500 ships, including their legendary command node, a vessel the size of a small moon, its crystalline surface refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. Commander Ramirez stood on the bridge of the Knight's flagship, now named Lone Star, as the combined human fleet dropped out of hyperspace. 200 night vessels, supported by conventional military ships, faced what could be humanity's final battle. All units report ready, Jackson announced from his tactical station. The Supreme Command node is broadcasting something different. The alien transmission echoed through their communications array, its usual precise mathematical patterns now containing discordant elements, almost like music, but twisted and wrong. "They're trying to speak our language," Dr. Henderson observed from his science station. "Attempting to incorporate randomness into their base code." Ramirez nodded grimly. "Time to show them the difference between copying a dance and feeling it. All Knights, execute Operation Last Waltz." The human fleet moved as one, but not in the rigid formations of traditional space combat. Instead, they flowed like a river of light, energy blades extending to create a spectacular display of power and grace. Each squadron moved in patterns inspired by their cultural heritage, yet somehow perfectly synchronized with the others. The Void Collective responded with their own attempt at unpredictability. Their ships broke from their usual geometric patterns, moving in chaotic spirals that mimicked human tactics. But there was something mechanical about their chaos, a calculated randomness that missed the essential human element. "They don't understand," Jackson grinned as he led Red Squadron through a complex series of maneuvers. "You can't program soul." The battle unfolded like a deadly ballet. The Knights wove through enemy fire in impossible patterns, their energy blades creating disruption fields that rippled through space. The Void Collective's massive fleet found itself unable to land effective hits against targets that moved like leaves in a cosmic wind. But the Supreme Command Node was learning, adapting in real time. Its massive crystalline form began pulsing with energy as it analyzed and attempted to predict the human movements. "They're trying to calculate every possible variation of our attack patterns," Henderson warned. "Given enough time, they might actually succeed." Ramirez squared her shoulders. "Then we don't give them time. All Knights, prepare for the thunder roll." This was the maneuver they'd been practicing in secret, a combination of every cultural dance pattern in their arsenal, performed simultaneously in three-dimensional space. It was beautiful, chaotic, and absolutely impossible for any computer to predict. The Night Squadrons spun into action, their formations shifting like a kaleidoscope. Texas two-step blended with Maori war dance, Russian ballet merged with Brazilian capoeira, all translated into movements that defied both physics and logic. The Void Collective's fleet began to falter, their attempts at adaptation creating conflicts in their shared consciousness. Ships collided as their predictive algorithms failed catastrophically, unable to process the pure human expression of joy and defiance before them. "The command node," Henderson shouted. "Its crystalline structure is destabilizing." Ramirez watched as fractures appeared in the massive vessel's surface, its attempts to comprehend and counter human unpredictability literally tearing it apart. In trying to become more like their enemy, the Void Collective had compromised the very foundation of their existence. "All Knights," Ramirez broadcast, "let's finish this dance." The combined night fleet moved in perfect harmony, their energy blades creating a web of light that enveloped the command node. The crystalline structure shattered, not from weapons fire, but from the impossible calculations it was forcing itself to make. As the command node fell, the remaining Void Collective fleet retreated in disarray, their hive mind in chaos. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered something they couldn't quantify, couldn't predict, couldn't overcome. Hours later, as the victory celebrations began across human space, Ramirez stood in the observation deck of the Lone Star, watching the Carina Nebula's colors paint the battlefield. "They'll be back," Jackson said, joining her at the viewport. "Different, maybe. Changed by what they experienced here." "Good," Ramirez smiled. "Maybe next time they'll be ready to learn the real lesson, that the greatest strength isn't in perfect calculation or flawless execution. It's in the wild, wonderful unpredictability of the human spirit." As if to emphasize her point, somewhere in the ship's lower decks, someone had started playing an old Texas waltz. The sound echoed through the corridors, a reminder that in the end, it wasn't advanced technology or tactical brilliance that had saved humanity. It was the simple, eternal truth that some things in the universe can't be calculated or predicted. They can only be felt, experienced, and danced. Shall we? Jackson offered his hand, and Ramirez laughed as they began to waltz among the stars, celebrating a victory that would be remembered not just for its military significance, but for proving that the human spirit, in all its beautiful chaos, was the most powerful force in the galaxy. The war wasn't over, but something fundamental had changed. The Void Collective had learned that there were things in the universe that couldn't be reduced to mathematics and logic. And humanity had learned that sometimes the best response to an overwhelming force wasn't to fight harder, but to dance more beautifully. As the celebration continued across human space, the stars themselves seemed to twinkle in rhythm with the music of victory, a symphony of chaos and order, logic and emotion, technology and tradition, all moving together in the eternal dance of existence.